Hello and welcome to a very much needed monthly roundup and empties. The last time I did one of those was the end of June, so we've got plenty of products to talk about. So I'm not going to, waste any of your time or my time with unnecessary introductions, and we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to, as usual, start with a little bit of like the non-makeup-y items, and then we're going to jump into the makeup. And one of my favorite things to discuss in my monthly roundup and empties is jewelry, so I'm going to talk about that. And I'm first going to mention two of my absolute favorite pairs of earrings from Anais jewelry. One is a pair that I'm wearing right now, which is this gorgeous, like sort of like statement but not super in your face type of earring with like the little white and blue design on it, which honestly reminds me so much of like the Delft pottery designs. Like in the Netherlands there is a city, it's a very small city called Delft. Beautiful town, by the way. If you're ever in the Netherlands, don't waste your time going to Amsterdam, go visit Delft, it is so much prettier. But they have this like very specific and very popular design which sort of looks like this, so when I wear this I always have to think of Delft pottery. The other pair of earrings I've also worn a lot on my channel is this beautiful like sort of like double hoop piece. So you have the big hoop and then you have the little like circly hoop in that, and I just think these are so much fun. They are a little bit statement, but again not too much in your face. I just really love these. And the third pair of earrings I want to mention are not from Ana Luisa, they are by Alice's Beauty Designs. And if you don't know who Alice is one of my bestest friends here on YouTube. She also lives in the Netherlands, and she has recently picked up a new hobby. You know, when you have 3 kids, twins and a toddler, like twin babies and a toddler, what else do you do but, have more spare time and pick up a new hobby? Making clay earrings, of all things. I don't know how she finds the time for that, but Alice is one of those people that I don't think can just like sit back and relax. She needs to do something, she needs to be creative, and she's been into clay earrings for a while, but she was getting really frustrated because I talked to her. I saw her recently when she gave me this beautiful pair, which we're going to talk about in a second, but we got together a couple of months ago and she just told me the whole story of how she loves clay earrings. She's been purchasing clay earrings for a while, but she was getting very frustrated that she couldn't find the specific color combinations that she wanted that would suit her, and that everything was just so unnecessarily expensive. So she decided to make her own. But at some point there was such an overproduction that she decided to start her own Etsy shop. So the first thing I'm going to mention is that if you're interested in picking up some of Alice's clay earrings, there is a link to the Etsy shop that she recently started, so you can find all of her beautiful creations there for, I think, really good prices. But when we got together, she gave me these as a present, and oh my lord, are they absolutely beautiful. Look at this detailing, look how happy they are with the little sunflowers on them. I just cannot get enough. And the only reason I don't have like 100 more pairs of her earrings is that I go on the website, I want to buy 90% of that, and then I rage quit. So I'm convinced this is the first but certainly not the last time that you're going to see Alice's clay earrings featured on my YouTube channel. And I believe this pretty much covers the non-makeup items. So now let's talk about some primarily new and some old makeup that I have really been enjoying in the past 2 months. Now, first and foremost, I have to talk about 2 products, like 2 base products that are absolutely not new to my collection, and you've actually seen heavily featured on my channel in my past few videos, because I've been using them very heavily now that I have a little bit of a tan. So I recently came back from vacation. I did acquire a little bit of a tan, and I started using again my Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude Foundation. This is in the shade 3 and 1, which is 1 shade up from what I usually wear. Now, I had an intense love relationship with this foundation when I first bought it like 6-7 more years ago, because it was the first time that I bought a foundation, like a high-end foundation. Actually, it wasn't that, it was the light version of this foundation that I purchased, and I fell in love with Estee Lauder foundations. Then I bought the original, and honestly, ever since then, every time I try the Estee Lauder Double Wear formula, I'm just like, yeah, my skin just loves this foundation. It looks great, it blurs my pores, it sits beautifully on the skin. I can build it up or I can sheer it down. And I know the first thing people will tell you when they talk about the Double Wear foundation is that it's a very heavy duty, very high coverage foundation. And honestly, I don't know that I agree with that, because I don't like super full coverage foundations. I can tell you I have an Hourglass foundation, the Vanish liquid foundation from also several years ago. That is a full coverage foundation. This allows for some flexibility depending on whether you want to apply it as a little bit more of a sheer layer of foundation or you want to build it up. And I use mine in like a, I would say, solid medium coverage, and I still think it looks absolutely flawless on my skin. It lasts really, really well throughout the day for me, like other foundations that I have in my collection that I really enjoy, that are a bit more on like the lighter coverage and have a bit more of a luminous finish to them. They look very pretty for quite a number of hours, but in the end of the day, you know, my skin gets oily, it starts to break up, so I can't really rely on these foundations to look flawless for more than 8 hours a day. This I can easily rely on for a good 12 hours a day, especially when I combine it with the correct powder. And I think recently I've been using it a lot with the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder, which is also a powder that, you know, really perfects the state of your skin. And I think the two are just a match made in heaven, and they just, you know, I'd never have to think about how my foundation looks throughout the day, because at any point when I look in the mirror, it will look fine. It will not have broken up, I will not look like a greasy mess, and I just continue to fervently love this foundation so many years later. And because I haven't really had the original in my rotation for a while, I only have it in my rotation when I use my summer shade, I'm always like reminded of how much I love it every summer. I do actually have a bottle of the shade that I would normally use, which is the shade 211, but I just haven't had the opportunity to open that yet because I am waiting to finish up another foundation that I've really been enjoying recently, which is the Dior Backstage. Now the Dior Backstage is more of a light to medium coverage foundation, a really beautiful finish on the skin, not too luminous but also not too matte. And I also enjoyed this foundation a little bit more in the summer because it is a little bit deeper than my skin in the winter. This is the shade 2N. But when I compare how these foundations perform in terms of longevity, while they look beautiful, like comparable to each other in the first 8 hours, the double wear definitely outperforms the Dior one, but the Dior one is still an absolutely stellar, stunning formula. This is the old one. I don't know what they've done after the reformulation, I can't guarantee that, and I think I've actually only got like a teensy binsy left in here. So as soon as this is finished, I am going to finally open the bottle of the original double wear that's been hanging out in my drawer since last summer when I fell in love with the double wear formula. Anywho, I've rambled more than enough about the Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation, and now I want to talk about a concealer that again I have rediscovered because it finally fits my skin tone, and this is the Lancome Teint Idole concealer. This one is in the shade 01, and already when I purchased this last year, I was like, how is this one of the lightest shades in the range? Like, I'm not even the lightest of the light out there. There are people who are far fairer than me. What exactly can they use in this range of concealer? Because this is actually too deep for me to use throughout most of the year. The only time of the year that I can use this concealer is throughout the summer, which basically spans like a month or two, when my skin tone is basically suited for this concealer. And the thing is that that's a shame, because this is an absolutely glorious concealer. It is different to my current favorite, which is the Dior Skin Correct. I've talked a lot about the Dior Skin Correct concealer. I'm pretty sure I rambled about the Dior Skin Correct in my previous monthly roundup and empties. This is my current favorite holy grail formula because it is this gorgeous concealer that has enough coverage but is very creamy and very hydrating, and it just wears so incredibly beautifully. The Lancome Teint Idole is a slightly different finish on the skin. It's a somewhat more lightweight demi matte finish, but with my extremely difficult, exceptionally picky under eyes, which are very, very dry, this performs beautifully. It's very lightweight, it blends out beautifully, it doesn't settle into fine lines, it doesn't wear ugly throughout the day. It is a really, really beautiful formula. So it's kind of a shame really that I can only use it for like the 1 or 2 months during the year when I'm dark enough for it. But I wanted to recommend it once again to those of you who do struggle with bit difficult under eyes because I've recommended the Dior Skin Correct one and I stand by my recommendation. But if you find the Dior Skin Correct one just a little too creamy, then I think the Lancome Teint Idole is just absolutely beautiful. I understand that brands have been releasing concealers left and right. I haven't really bought anything new since the Dior Skin Correct. I'm slightly tempted to try the new Gucci one because I have a really soft spot for Gucci's packaging, but it does seem like from people's descriptions that the Gucci one is very similar to the one from Lancome. So I am going to make it a point to wait a little bit and finish a few things up before I buy yet another concealer, because it takes me about 300 years to finish a concealer. Okay, I'm going to sort of like break this up into a category. So the next category I want to talk about is blush. I don't really have a highlighter or a new bronzer that I want to address. I still have a bit of a inexplicable obsessive relationship with the Dior Natural Bronze in the shade Deep. I keep talking about it, I keep using it. There's something about the combination of the outer packaging, the formula, and the color of this bronzer that still gets my motor running. But I did talk about this bronzer quite extensively also in my previous monthly roundup and empties. And now I want to talk about a couple of blushes. Now the first blush I'm going to mention is not new, and I did ramble about it in my previous monthly roundup and empties, but I can't shut up about it because I've just fallen head over heels with this blush. This is the Gucci blush in the shade Soft Red, which was one of their new releases for the summer. I've made my feelings for these Gucci blushes quite clear lately. I think this is basically my favorite like luxury formula blush that I have tried so far, because I love everything about these. I love the packaging, I love the formula, I love the colors, I love how they wear, I love how they apply. Just everything about them to me is sheer perfection. But there is just something about this specific shade, because it is not a coral, it is not a red, it is not an orange. I like to describe it a little bit as, you know, a bit of a chili pepper kind of color. And I know what you're thinking. When you think of a chili pepper, you think a bit more of like something that has more red to it. But that's why I describe this as a bit of a chili pepper color, because it is not coral. If you compare this to like a classic coral shade, you will see how much more pink the corals are. And this has these like slightly chili peppery tones to it that just make it so unbelievably unique and so unbelievably beautiful, and I am in love with this blush. It is the perfect, you know, type of color for me to wear in the summer, and I've really been enjoying it. It was one of the makeup products that I missed the absolute most when I was on holiday. And now the other two blushes I want to discuss are actually new to my collection. The first one is definitely Martina made me buy it. This is the Armani Luminous Silk Blush in the shade 10, which is described as a peach beige, and I don't know that I can do a better job than Armani in describing this color, because it is indeed a peach beige. It is also the blush that I'm wearing today, and you can see that it has these beautiful like neutral tones to it, but it has a little bit of peach and a little bit of pink in a perfectly balanced manner. Now I don't know that I'm head over heels in love with this blush like Martina is, and I think part of the reason for that is because she's slightly fairer than I am. Well, not slightly fairer, I think she's quite much fairer than I am, especially now, which is why I also want to say that I want to withhold my final judgment on this blush until the winter months when I'm a little bit more fair, because I feel like right now this blush shows up on me. It looks really pretty. I really like it. Do not get me wrong, I really like it. But I have this nagging feeling that in the winter it's going to look even better, and I'm going to appreciate it even more. Because right now it shows up, but it does look a little bit too light for me. I will try to swatch it here for you so that you can see the color a little bit better. Or, you know, not, because it's barely showing up right now. But again, it's this beautiful like peachy, beigey, pinky color. Now in terms of formula, this to me is very similar to the Gucci blushes, because it's this lightweight, soft focus, blurring matte but slightly satin formula. It's not a flat matte. It has a little bit of like a sheen to it, and it looks very flattering on the skin. The only thing I'm not sure of is the color. And I did want to mention the packaging. I didn't really realize when I ordered the blush that the packaging of this would be so incredibly interesting. I am a sucker for like asymmetrical, like interesting shapes, and just look at the shape and like the outer packaging of this blush. I think it is so sleek and so beautiful. You have the Armani logo here on the button to open the blush, and it's just like slightly asymmetric and just very, very interesting. I actually didn't think that the packaging was this interesting. I thought it was just like a round shape, but it is not. It is beautiful, it is very sleek, and definitely very luxuriously feeling. I will let you know in a couple of months how things have progressed with this blush. For now, we are, you know, getting to know each other. We are in the dating phase. We're not quite in a committed relationship, let's put it that way. Now, a blush that I can instantly tell you that I absolutely love is one of the new Chanel blushes that was released for fall 2023, which was part of their Equinox collection, I want to say. It comes with two colors, like a more purpley one and this, which is like a more pumpkiny, orangey one, and it is precisely the color of this blush that I am head over heels in love with. In terms of formula, honestly, it's Chanel. I didn't really expect to be disappointed. The packaging, solid, classy, you know, nothing out of the box, but still I don't mind it. I think it is a really beautiful packaging. The attention to detail that has gone into the embossing of this blush is probably one of the biggest and most attractive things about it, and why so many people wanted to own these specific blushes from Chanel. But in my specific case, it was not just that, it was also the fact that this color seemed like the most delicious orangey pumpkiny color, and I am a sucker for an orange pumpkin color, and I'm still waiting for the day that Pat is going to release a color that's quite like this. And that reminds me, let's do a little bit of a swatch comparison here, because I think one of you asked me to compare this shade. Oh, by the way, just in case I didn't say that, this is the shade 797. And there is another shade in the range which leans a little bit more purple mauve, and that was definitely not going to be my speed. But some of you asked me how this specific shade of blush compares to Desert Orchid from Pat McGrath, and I don't think they're similar. Even like just looking at them next to each other, you can see how much more like pink Desert Orchid has in it. It doesn't come across pink on the skin, that, like, don't get me wrong, it's like a bronzy peachy color, but the shade from Chanel just has like this beautiful deep pumpkin quality to it. So here you have Desert Orchid, and Desert Orchid has a bit of a sheen to it because it's one of the not sparkly, but the blushes that have a bit of a pearl to them from Pat's line. So you can see here you have Desert Orchid, clearly much more pink in there, and here is the Chanel blush, which is clearly so much more orange, and that's like beautiful, like slightly desaturated, deeper pumpkin kind of orange. This makes me think of like pumpkin spice lattes and stuff like that. I think it's a stunning color. I really have no complaints about the formula itself. If I had to compare the formula, for example, of this to the one from Gucci and the Armani Luminous Silk ones, I would say this is maybe a little bit more matte. Not matte as in like powdery and unflattering, but just a little bit more of like a classic matte compared to something like the one from Armani, which definitely has a little bit of like that silky satiny quality to it. Oh, and something maybe that I should add just for the Dutchies around here. So I purchased this off of the Dutch Chanel website thinking that it's going to be a Chanel exclusive thing. It wasn't. I went into store the other day, into Douglas, like one of our Sephora type stores, and it was just there on display. You can buy this on both EasyPutty and Douglas. I don't know that they will ever be included in their shopping night sales, so the 20 or 25% off sales, but you know, it doesn't hurt to wait it out and see whether you can snag one of these there on sale. And now let's move into like the largest, you know, portion of this video, which not surprisingly is going to be eyeshadow, and I'm going to split this into powder eyeshadow and liquid eyeshadow. We're going to talk about the powder eyeshadow first, and the first item I want to discuss is the one that I have the least formed opinion on, and this is the YSL eyeshadow clutch, or how it is called, the mini clutches in the shade Kasaba Spices. So this is the little quad from YSL that I purchased. These have been like very hyped on YouTube. And I can kind of understand why, but at the same time I also feel like a lot of the hype has to do with the, you know, the fact that these are a little bit new, also to YSL doing like these types of quad eyeshadows, and the fact that the packaging of these looks like the outside of like a YSL bag. And because for a lot of us who don't own like classic luxury bags, this sort of like makes us feel included. I don't know, I have the feeling that there is something psychological happening with people going crazy over these YSL clutch quads, and the fact that they almost make you feel like you own one of those YSL bags. I don't know whether you guys would agree that there is like a little bit of a psychological component there with these imitating the bag and people feeling like it is like a little bit of a taste of what it's like to own one of these bags. Anyway, this is like on a completely different note. I don't want to be too critical of these because they are actually a stunning new type of formula. And these are also like very interesting in terms of the types of textures that are present in there, because you have mattes, you have satins, and you have these like really sparkly toppery type eyeshadows. Now I have to say, the quad that I picked up unfortunately only has 2 of these formulas, so I have either the 3 mattes or the one slightly more subtle toppery kind of shade. I think the cooler toned one, Storados, actually has more types of textures, and the toppery shade is a little bit more intense. However, the formula of the mattes in here, they're so creamy, they're so blendable, they look so flattering on the skin, and this topper shade is just so elegant. And I do love the undertones of these. They're just beautiful undertones on me. So the one look that I'm able to create this with this palette, or the one look that I have tried so far, because I really need to try using this eyeshadow quad a little bit more, has been like, I've really enjoyed it, and I think it looks really beautiful, really flattering, and really elegant. But because I've only used it so little, like I bought it, then I went on holiday, and then I've been busy like testing out some new things that I purchased while I was on holiday, and I sort of like forgot about this quad. I don't know that I still have like a really solid opinion on it. I do think that maybe one of the other colors, maybe in these Storados, would have been a better choice for me, and I would have fallen head over heels with these if I had purchased another color story. But as it is, I like it. I think it's solid quality, but I don't know how I feel about it yet. It's just like with the Armani blush. We're getting to know each other. And I have it here on my desk because I've made it a point to use a couple of the eyeshadow palettes that I have used a little bit less in the past months, and then, you know, have a more full-formed opinion. Now, the next item I want to talk about, I have a fully formed opinion on, because I am obsessed with it. I rarely use the word obsessed here on this channel because I absolutely hate it. It is just very overused on YouTube, and people basically refer to everything left and right as being their obsession. But I truly am obsessed with this eyeshadow palette. And a lot of you will not be surprised that this is the Lancome Quint in the shade Bronze Absolu. Now, the packaging of this quint is very simple, very understated. Like, compared to all the other luxury packaging of palettes that I have, maybe on par with the Dior one in terms of how bland it is. It is really bland. There's like, if you compare these two, obviously this is so much more bland. I'm not saying that it's bad or that it doesn't feel luxurious, it's just bland. I feel like they could step up their game with the packaging, because the formula in here, there's only one word for the formula of these eyeshadows, and it is stellar. These are phenomenal. They are sort of like a cream to powder formula, especially the matte eyeshadows. There are 2 matte eyeshadows in here, these 2, and they are definitely not a powder. They're somewhere on the spectrum of cream to powder, so that's something you need to keep in mind if you're a fan of cream to powder formulas. And these shades here, the 3 satin metallics, metallics is a bit of a stretch. I would call them a little bit more satin than metallic. They do have some interesting sparkle to them, especially like the green olivey shade here, but they are nowhere near like a high shine metallic sparkly eyeshadow. But I was fully aware of that when I purchased the quint, because I did swatch these in store, and the first thing that I was attracted to was basically the color story, because this is such an interesting combination of colors. Is these like cooler to neutral browny beige shades combined with that pop of olive green. Isn't that just such a beautiful little color story? I love it. And personally, I am a huge fan of this cream to powder formula that's going on in this quint. I think it blends out beautifully. I think it looks so blurring and so elegant and beautiful on the lid, and I just love the looks that I've done with it. Yes, it lacks the sparkle, but you know that I'm not one to like have an issue going into another palette to add a little bit of sparkle. So I've been adding sparkle from my McGrath eyeshadows, and actually more recently with the liquid eyeshadows that I have purchased that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I can absolutely tell you this is one of the makeup items, or the makeup item, that I missed the absolute most when I was on holiday. I'm always excited to use it, I always feel joy when I use it, and that really is the biggest telltale sign for me that I've truly fallen in love with a product. Now, there's only one item that I want to discuss before we move on into the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, and that is this eyeshadow that I bought totally on a whim. This is a single eyeshadow from Dior. It is in the shade Beige Mitzah. And the reason I bought this eyeshadow basically was that I touched it and I was like, oh my lord, what is this kind of sorcery? What is this stunning, smooth, creamy, metallic, shiny, but not sparkly eyeshadow? Look at this. This is just... You unfortunately will have to trust me that digging your fingers in here is a magical experience, and if you don't believe me, just like go into your local cosmetic store and dig your fingers into this eyeshadow. From what I can tell, the range of these single eyeshadows from Dior has metallic and satin type formulas. This is a metallic. They also have satins, and they have some really interesting colors, but I don't know that the other colors are super interesting. Oh, maybe there was a glittery one as well. Come to think of it, I think there was a glittery one as well. But to me it was the combination of the texture of this eyeshadow and the color, because it is just this really, really interesting neutrally brown, slightly pink leaning, but then in a certain lighting very silvery kind of eyeshadow. One of you said that this eyeshadow translates bronzy on your eyelids. I don't know that it would ever look bronzy on me. On me it's really like a neutral beigey brown with that silver sheen on it, but it is again one of those formulas that you can really play around with. You can put it as like a very sheer wash of color. I did actually do a look with it. I can leave a link up to that here if you would like to see this eyeshadow in action. But yes, it is very expensive, so it's not that I would tell you to go out and buy it, but at the very least I would recommend that, you know, engage the pleasure centers and, you know, your tactile experiences, and like indulge in just touching this eyeshadow when you go into store next time. So that's the very least that I would recommend. Just like go and touch it to get a shot of endorphins. Right. And now let's talk about the I Need a Nude palette from Natasha Denona. This is the most recent release from her, and unfortunately I will not be able to show you the palette in its original state, because I've already done what I was originally plotting to do, which is do some sort of a combination of glam and I Need a Nude to create my perfect neutral palette. So unfortunately you will not be able to see the I Need a Nude in its original glory, but let me show you what I did actually create out of the two palettes. So I was doubting a little bit what to do, and in the end I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put the mattes in one palette and a couple of the shimmers that didn't fit into the other palette, but basically I've split them into mattes and shimmers. So these are now my I Need a Nude and Glam palette made into the absolute perfect neutral eyeshadow palette for me. I don't know that I have my thoughts are any different on this than they were in my recent review, so honestly I'm just going to refer you to the video and comparison swatches that I've done for this palette. You know, it's just a good mixture of different types of textures, which is always something that I thought was missing in her original Glam palette. So now having these two together is just going to be such a workhorse for me, and I cannot wait to tell you how the combination of these two has worked out for me. And now let's talk finally about my newest obsession, which is liquid eyeshadows. Now, liquid eyeshadows were on my ban no buy list for quite a few years after the Still a Glitter and Glow fiasco. So I don't know if any of you remember this. In 2016 or something, Stila released these glorious glittery eyeshadows which were called the Stila Glitter and Glow liquid eyeshadows, and they were phenomenal. They were so sparkly, so beautiful, so impactful on the lid, but they dried out so motherfucking fast. So within like half a year some of them had already dried out for me, and you know, it's also my fault that knowing these are liquid eyeshadows I didn't use them as much as I should have. So I threw away quite a few of these with them being in a fairly new state. So after being burned by these Stila eyeshadows, I was like, no way am I buying any more liquid eyeshadows. And for a really long time, I did actually like really stick to my ban. But more recently, Pat McGrath released her liquid eyeshadows. It's already been quite a while since Lisa Eldridge released the liquid Lurex. I was still in my full-on liquid eyeshadow ban phase, but these came out, and again, I didn't purchase them. I had no plans of purchasing them, but I noticed someone on our like local, you know, second-hand selling platform, it's called Marktplatz, sell these for 10 euros a piece. And I was like, it's Pat McGrath, I'm really curious about these. For 10 euros a piece, honestly, it's a great way to like just try them and see how they are. And if they dry out really fast, at least I didn't pay full price for them or anything above 20 euros. Like both of these together were 20 euros. So for me, that was like really worth to try the formula. And I tried them, and I basically have fallen head over heels. But not only because these are a beautiful formula, but also because I've like started to like do my makeup a little bit differently maybe. Having eyeshadows like this in my collection, like the Lancome eyeshadows, where I really love the formula but I'm missing a little bit of the sparkle, is a perfect combination of factors. Like I use these liquid eyeshadows from Pat McGrath and also the ones from Lisa Eldridge essentially as toppers. You don't have to. All of these are liquid eyeshadows that you can use fully as like opaque colors on your lids. In fact, today I'm wearing two of Lisa Eldridge's liquid Lurex eyeshadows that you're going to see in a video that's coming later on. But I use them as toppers because I find them to be very versatile, and I particularly like using these when they're like a very, very sheer layer of sparkle and like sheen on the lids. So let me tell you the colors that I have from Pat McGrath. So from Pat McGrath, I have the shades Luna Rose and Platinum Bronze. I have done a look actually with the Lancome Queen and these two eyeshadows that I'm going to leave up in the cards for you again. So I'm not going to swatch them. I'm just going to say that these and the Lisa Eldridge ones are the type of formula that the more you sheer them out, the more sheeny, sparkly and beautiful they become. And you know, this new way of, you know, thinking about my makeup and doing my makeup, together with the fact that it's already been 1.5 years since Lisa Eldridge released the liquid Lurex eyeshadows, and I think to my advantage, some of you have already bought these at release and you vouched for these not having changed one bit, not having dried out, performing as the first day that you bought them. So that is why I felt quite confident in purchasing a couple of these. Now I have purchased one additional color that's coming together with the eye pencils that Lisa just released, but we're going to talk about that in a future video. But for now, I've purchased these shades Zora, which is this beautiful darker chocolate brown shade that I have on the outer edges of my eyes. I've got the shade Emily, which is a beautiful taupe loaded with sparkle, which is in the inner portion of my lids. And I also have the shade Anais, which is more of like a sage green loaded with sparkle. Now, the only thing I will say about all 5 of these eyeshadows, you know, all 5 of these were purchased because they are the more glittery type formulas. In both Pat's line and Lisa's line, there are eyeshadows that lean more on the metallic side of things, so they're not super sparkly. But because of the way that I like to use these, I made it a point to buy the ones that have large chunky glitter to them because I like using them as toppers. The one thing I actually want to do now is maybe compare the shade Platinum Bronze from Pat to the shade Zora from Lisa Eldridge, because even if you look at them like this, they sort of look a little bit similar, right? So I'm actually very curious whether they are different from each other and how similar are they. So this is the shade from Pat and this is Zora from Lisa Eldridge. Now, honestly, the shade from Pat is maybe a little bit more cool and grayish in its tones, and this is just a little bit more of like a chocolate brown. But in the end of the day, if you shear them out and put them on the lid, are they really going to look all that different? Probably not. So I don't know that Zora was like the best choice. I was kind of hoping that it will be warmer in tone, like a warmer chocolate brown, but I should probably just have listened to Liz Eldridge better, because she did describe it as a cooler toned chocolate brown. So I should have known that it's going to be a bit similar to Platinum Bronze. But either way, I'm really happy to have both. I think they're really, really beautiful eyeshadows, and I will continue to use them and let you know how I feel about them. So this pretty much wrapped up the portion of the video where we talk about the makeup that I have been using and enjoying, and now we're briefly going to talk about the empties portion. So here I want to once again ask you all, do you still want me to include the empties portion in these videos, or do you want me to completely abolish it? I just can never tell whether people are really interested in the empties or not. Anyway, let me quickly talk about the few empties that I have over here. Let's talk about the one skincare item that I have. This is the Paula's Choice Ceramide Enriched Firming Moisturizer. I chose this also because it has retinol and vitamin C, two of my absolute favorite actives that work really well on my skin. Overall, a really solid night moisturizer. I don't know that I can tell much more about it. It's like on the heavy moisturizer side, so if you suffer from drier skin, I think this is a really great moisturizer. And then I have a couple of makeup items over here to share with you that are not new. You have seen them come around quite a few times. Starting off with my favorite Kiko Extra Sculpt Mascara. Now, I will say only this. Every time I stray from this mascara and I purchase something different to try, especially something more expensive, I regret it and I immediately revert back to Kiko Extra Sculpt and nothing else. This is still my favorite mascara, but mascara is one of those like strictly personal choices. So if you hear me recommend this mascara and you try it and you don't like it, then that's fine. But personally for me, this mascara works really well because it is on the drier side. I've really come to the conclusion that I really like mascaras that are a little bit drier and like just coat and give volume in one go. Like, I don't like building my mascara because I feel like then my lashes start to clump together. I will say this, a lot of people aren't really a fan of the brush of this mascara because it is this hourglass shape, so it is, for people a little bit more difficult to get into your inner corners. I don't know that I really struggle too much with that. I just love everything about this mascara and the fact that it is not as expensive as everything else. I will say this, the price of this has increased quite significantly since I started purchasing it. I think when I started purchasing it, this was in the range of 8 euros and now it's nearing 12. But still, compared to some other mascaras that I'm going to talk in the future, this is still much more affordable and it is a really solid mascara. Next we have an empty of my L'Oreal Brow Artist Plumper, which for years was my favorite little like eyebrow mascara. And I still think this is a great product because it gives you both, fluff to your lashes and a little bit of color. But now that I have the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax, I actually like the brow wax better because it keeps my eyebrows in that fluffed up sort of like laminated place a lot better than the L'Oreal Brow Artist Plumper. This doesn't give off any color, but given that I already have pretty thick dark eyebrows, I don't feel the need to necessarily have the color there. So I still like this. I think this is still a solid drugstore choice if you want to have like a little mascara for your eyebrows. But I think for now I'm going to probably be sticking with the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax and products of this type. And last but not least, I have one of my staples over here. This is the MAC Prep and Prime Lip Primer, which I have completely used up. I have to depot what's left in the tube here because unfortunately a bunch of it remains in there and you can't really like click it out anymore. And a real like criticism that I have for this packaging of this product, because if you were to throw it away once you can't twist it up anymore, you would basically be throwing away like 20% of it. But for the rest, I've really enjoyed this primer for a really long time. I always apply it on my lips before I apply my lip liner and my lipstick because it keeps my lipsticks in place. It sort of like smoothens out the texture on the lips. It makes my lipsticks last longer. It's a staple for me and I will continue repurchasing it and I will continue to ramble about it in my monthly roundup and empties if you're still curious about the empties. And believe it or not, we have once again made it to the end of this roundup and empties video for the months of July and August. Let me know what your, favorites have been in those 2 months. What have you been loving? What have you discovered? What is new? What are you excited about? Do you have opinions on any of the products that I you know, mentioned in this specific video. I can't wait to chat with you in the comment section below as usual. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!